and an institution. There's a couple of others. Resmela is going to be bringing out a its own capability, but previous capability, previously described in some of my articles, but it is now vastly improved, and this will allow people, educators in particular, to build things without knowing much about building. Most all of the stuff that people need to know about is already hidden in the system.
So like a WYSIWYG type builder.
What?
So like a WYSIWYG type builder where for novices on the internet, where basically the coding is already done, and they're just taking
yeah, well, there's no coding. Essentially, the objects are already there in a library available.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And they're all already resible, and basically you've got a collection of items, and all you have to do is tell the system where you want the items, and they appear.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something that's part of one of my articles that I've been pushing on is if you're going to teach in a virtual world, you do not have to know how to build. We've got good resources, and broadly speaking, I'm going to want to talk about this a lot in the future, and that is my digital teaching assistant concept, which I've been posting articles about. And essentially, it would be a collection of things that are, some of which are already available, and many of which could easily be available, and then some people are actually making sample examples. But I'm simply putting it all together under the concept of a digital teaching assistant, because that, I believe, would make some sense to teachers. Eileen, have you finished? Have you got everything you wanted?
Yeah, I think so. And I think we've got enough people here to start the introductions. And Selby, you were talking about, some of us know each other, but some don't. So if you could explain your background and your claim to fame,
Okay.
which are many, and then we'll go around the room and have everyone say hello.
Okay, and I'm Selby Evans, a retired professor of psychology, long retired, and I have obviously a continuing interest in education, both as a psychologist and as an educator, because I was doing both of those things. And I see a lot of potential in virtual worlds, so I'm essentially trying to promote various things that I think are needed for education in virtual worlds. And I picked out actually, I think there's five initiatives right now that I know about that I want to tell people about, and I will give you links, pass out a note card with links to all of those things in a few minutes when I stop talking. The links will also include links to my blog. I have an extensive coverage of articles about education in virtual worlds, and I'm actually broadening that to include new kinds of I'm calling it new sensory education in one place. That is to say, new ideas about how to provide education, and I'm talking about how my concept of digital teaching assistant would fit in. So there are a number of articles for you to read about.
Eileen.
Yes, I did get it. And
Okay,
the problem is I have
let me
been
know if
in
it works.
continuous meetings, 2 days of face-to-face, and then the rest were virtual. So I haven't had a chance to do anything fun, but hopefully in the next day or two I can get to it.
And if it works, what we'll do is we can just leave a bunch of them laying around or create portals, and that way you can move crowds a lot quicker if we have to.
And we do have Empire State College, for those of you that are alums, some of you are still in the program. We have a new president who came and spoke to us yesterday face-to-face, and claims he wants to shake things up. He wants to be innovative. He loves the arts. He's been very impressed with some of the arts things he sees. And Selby, we're a unique college in that we're spread all over New York State, and we were designed for adults. So we don't have the big campus with the football, but we have places all over. And so he's been going around visiting all the different places. And we have a new associate dean who I'm going to see if she can come to the residency as well. And let's see, Scott, well, I don't know if you know about this. There is something called the Fall Academic Conference at SUNY, the SUNY Empire State College, and we're going to be presenting about the residency. And yeah,
cool.
Yeah, and Scott, I don't know if you can come. Well, we'll get you in virtually, and we have a poster session and a what they call concurrent session, and we're really going to we're doing is the residency is coming in under what they have a theme this year of social justice. The college has residencies where people come in, they go to New York City and they stay in a hotel, or they come up to Saratoga and they stay in a hotel. That is very expensive, and it really is out of the reach of a lot of our students. And Selby, we have adults coming in from all over. They have jobs. Many of them have daycare responsibilities. They can't just come up to Saratoga or go to New York City for a weekend. They can't afford it. So we're really promoting this on a lot of those levels. And Scott, I know we don't want to take the whole thing up at this, but you want to tell them any of the topics that you've got in your paper? And Scott's going to New Orleans to present this.
It was great. The topic was a report on last year's residency and just the there's some situational, which I've been working on today, as a matter of fact, some situational literature, and then it's an outline of basically the efficacy and, in our humble opinion, overall success of holding an online residency, just in terms of what the participants got out of it. And we went over procedures, everything that we reviewed last year. We went to Dr. Alon's Island, which is a remake of the main campus, and it's quite lovely. But we reviewed basically situational information about where VR is, AR is at the moment in the tech landscape and in the business landscape. And did a little bit of learning, a brief demonstration on building in VR, which inspired me to great lengths. If you go to see Shadowglade, you'll see what happened. And basically an afterwards summary of how it worked for all of the participants. And this year, again, we got very positive responses, and I'm delivering a paper on the findings, which were that there was a strong sense of embodiment. I think people felt engaged, and as Eileen pointed out, we all saved on the expense of having to drive to a main campus.
Yes.
Eileen, what are the dates for that campus-wide?
The campus thing, okay, just want to make sure it's toggled on. The campus thing, I'll have to check. It's probably around the 23rd and 24th of October. If you can get there, we are going to have a lot.
That's a Monday, no.
Yeah.
That's a Wednesday, Thursday?
Well, let me check. I'm not smart enough to be able to open both things at once, so I'll double check and let you know. It's, since we're distributed as a faculty, and that's why, for 2 days I've had to physically be in Saratoga, which is part of why I'm a little disoriented, because I'm away from my computer. But the college brings all the faculty in, and we have different meetings, and we have some rallying, and but they really wanted to emphasize social justice this year, and I said, boy, we were right on topic, and we submitted a proposal, and some of the faculty who came. I'm honestly not worried about the students, because they come into my class, and I will have 2 sessions with them. And Selby, anybody here has been through that. Oh, thank you, Celie. Thank you. For those who can't. so the students will be up to speed. My challenge is going to be to get the faculty to not turn everything into a lecture. And I'm running a faculty meeting tomorrow where I'm going to try to remind them of that. So Scott, Scott was good enough. And I think you're finished with all these faculty. They can't grade you, Scott. Scott's going to run one of the islands.
I got 2 more classes and I'm out.
I know.
Um,
So,
and it's been a blast, and I'm leaving a 4-star review or a 5-star review on Yelp.
oh, good. So he's going to be there. So Scott's got a lot coming up, and I've got a couple of slides in this, but I'm hoping that maybe some of you can come if you can. Probably more to help faculty than students. And because we're going to we have quite a few students that might potentially come. And we have some alums, we have some faithful people come. We're going to put together, I have a Google form to get people to just register in case we run out of space, because then we have to let the students in first because it's part of their grade. So anyway, I'll bring some slides up on that. But let's see if we can get Coraline. Coraline, see if you can take the mic. She hasn't said that she couldn't hear. And thank you again, Celie. Coraline's been in before.
Coraline has a dot.
She has the dot.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Does it work?
Yeah, tell them something about your recent successes.
All right. Well, hi everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? I think my mic is
Yes.
functioning. Great.
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. So my name's Coraline. I am a recent graduate of the Mallet program. Just finished up this past semester. For my final project, I was working in augmented reality. Quite a bit. I was working with the nursing faculty at SUNY Ulster to develop a augmented reality application that could be used on nursing mannequins to simulate neurological symptoms, so that the nursing students would be able to see things like pupil dilation and symptoms of stroke and those kind of things that aren't available to see on the rigid mannequins as they exist today. So that was one of the projects that I worked on, and that was a pretty big success. I was able to do a prototype and a research usability study at the college. And the first go around showed quite a bit of interest from both faculty and nursing students to have access to some kind of augmented reality application that could enhance their simulation experience. So since leaving Empire a few months ago, I've been working to kind of get into the next phases of development, which would be developing the mobile application and doing like a beta launch. So that's been kind of an undertaking, getting quotes from different application companies to develop some of the code and other pieces that I can only bring it so far, and also seeking grants and that kind of thing. I've also been doing a little bit of writing, trying to entice or get the research out there for support for the application. So that's been a bit of an undertaking too. I'm kind of a one-man show at this point, so I can only go as fast, I guess, as I can go. But I'm hoping that I can get it into a beta version in the near future.
So she's another one of our stars who's finally graduated, and I think we'll have to go over to Celie. Well, so is Anais. And Anais has her own island, Sculpture Island. I will have to speak for her. She is an artist, and so is Scott. And I so respect people with those talents. And she has told me over the years it's very hard for a sculptress because you make, you know, big objects and things. And so she was able to bring that onto Sculpture Island. And so I think she still has that island up. If you really want a visual extravaganza, very unique, you can go over and see how Marjorie has actually used things that either she's created or that she's repurposed from creative artists. And it's a delight. And I think we'll get Celie, who's been kind enough to type. Celie, I think you can take the mic. And Celie is in her last semester, but she was kind enough to come by. So you want to take the mic?
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I took the summer off. So I'm back full for this last semester of college, and throughout the college I've been developing multiverse masters, and I was developing it with an idea of getting homeschool and private schools more interested in technology opportunity in education using a tool like this. And so I've been developing examples for curriculum and portfolios and supports. Now, right now I'm focusing a little bit more on my daughter's education, which complements everything I've been doing because she's autistic. And what we found is the only real strong window into her world is through the technology aspect. She responds really wonderful to gaming and the technology tools, where in a classroom she just couldn't be in a classroom environment. Basically, she would be restricted to being in a one-on-one room all by herself with a one-on-one teacher. And even the whole aspect of doing traditional work, it's not something that's possible for her. So my shift has shifted a little bit into learning more about autism. But what I'm hoping is after I graduate, I'm actually going to create my virtual world more to her needs, but I'm really looking at opportunities to take what I have and, like Selby has mentioned, there's a lot of opportunities out there for us to share what we've created, share our files, share our curriculums so that other educators can benefit from those and give them that open source licensing. So, I am looking forward to, once I'm not really busy in college, to look into these other groups and partnering with people, especially ones that are interested in developing, more curriculum along the lines of special needs as well.
And I know a lot is being done in the areas of healthcare, autism. We had another student who was studying autism, and he was making virtual islands for that. But I'm looking at the time, so I want to advance through a couple of things here. Let me just zoom in a little more myself. Today, we want to think about this residency coming up, and if people can come to that, that would be great. I will send out something that you can sign up so we'll know how many can actually come. And yeah, I'm trying to think of. And again, we're going to be reporting on that. But tonight I want to tell you about a book chapter that I'm involved in right now. And it's coming out of the University of Utah. And I don't know, maybe Selby might know this gentleman, Robert Zheng, Z-H-E-N-G. It's a group of cognitive psychologists and people who are finally lumping together a whole bunch of things. They're lumping together under the title of immersion. Virtual realities, augmented realities, 360 cameras. They even threw in 3D printing. And they're trying to find out, how do we cognitively process these environments, and how do they affect our behaviors, affect, how do we behave within them? And what they're finding is, according to these, and I will have to ask Selby to step in because he's much more the psychologist than I, that there's not really a cognitive framework yet. And so they asked, because of some of my publications they wrote and solicited from different people who've published in this area, they're looking for developing more of a methodological approach to studying these type of environments, which are completely ubiquitous. They put you back into the world. I mean, when you look at a text as an abstraction from the world, 3D is in the world, you know. But what I'm not smart enough to know the psychological aspects, so I told them I could look at some of the design aspects. How do you learn how to work in these environments, which is essentially the methodology I use in my classes, which is you come in, you experience the environment. And Selby, for anybody who's been here, and all of these folks have made their own islands, they started by experiencing it in a class. Got enough interest that they just then decided to make their own island. And my approach is they start by doing. They start by learning some of the mechanics, and then they start thinking about their curriculum that they want to bring in.
I think that's right. And I am vaguely aware of the group. I have not actually been in contact with them and have not followed, I have not seen publications. I have a difficulty, since I'm not in a university, I can't really see lots of publication without an expensive subscription, which I won't do. But the general, I think you're correct. You're actually quite correct. One thing that basically, how do we get familiar with the world that we are born into? Well, we get familiar by doing things, and you'll notice that's exactly what children do all the time they're growing up, and some of us keep doing that all our lives. We want to try out new things in the world, and now we do the same thing in virtual worlds. We do things, and we get used to being in virtual worlds. So it's not a matter of the virtual world becomes a tool that we work with, just like the real world is a tool that we work with. And I suspect that's sort of the orientation they are following. But I don't know the methodologies that they are. And if I can read an article, if you can give me a link to an article that I can read, I'll look at it.
Yeah, and let me see. Okay, you still hear me. I put it up on that board there. I don't know if you can read it. And, you know, if you see the board, you can focus in. If you turn it, then just turn the page back. That's what they were looking for. So I framed out what I call the design approach. You know, I don't want to mess with the psychologists, get into their areas. And they did accept the chapter, but now I have to deliver it, and I did work on this and some of you have been doing a lot of research in digital anthropology. Yeah, Coraline, you want to step up? And so I was wondering if we could talk about this, and I'm hopefully my recording will work.
Sure. Yeah, so I was kind of interested in some of that stuff too while I was developing the augmented reality application, because there's not a lot of framework right now for using augmented reality for education. So when I did my project, I kind of had to come up with my own framework using kind of a discovery learning methodology or theory to kind of base off the curriculum and the way that the application would work. And so there was a lot of preliminary things that I had to kind of take into consideration. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but one of those things was that chart that I had made where it kind of showed the environment
around the patient.
The student.
With you literally had spheres of influence or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's correct. Yeah, it was called Spheres of Interactivity, and it wasn't just about the technology, but also the way that people were kind of interacting with that tool in the real world environment. because that's one of the things about augmented reality that makes it a little bit more, I guess, sophisticated. But anyway, I had to kind of research that stuff. But then secondarily, while I was researching, I came across kind of an emerging field called digital anthropology, which is people are actually starting to study the way that psychologically and through social interactions, how these digital platforms are kind of transforming the way that we interact with each other and the way that we interact, as a society as a whole. So it's kind of interesting. It's branching off of both kind of user design and then also like the cognitive behavior elements. So it might be worth looking into.
Yes, and more thoughts on that. And what I was trying to turn to, part of what this group is looking at is immersive experiences like this, but they're also looking at something that Carlin was working on, the augmented reality. And I don't know if any of you have heard of Merge Cube. Does that ring a bell, Merge Cube?
Yeah. Yeah, I've looked at it. It's and the elementary school around here uses it.
Yeah. My take is, have you seen the QR codes that you can bring your cell phone over? They're sort of like that. So Carlin's seen it. And it's a spongy little cube with a lot of sort of hieroglyphics on it, which I think effectively make it a QR code. And right now, there are some simple apps out there that let you hover something over it. Now, last year I taught a course where we went to Unity, the big game engine. Well, Carlin was working on that too. And you want to talk about your experience, Carlin, when you were trying to do the work with Unity and Vuforia?
Yeah, sure. So I was kind of piloting a bunch of different technologies that I could use to develop this application. One of the ones that I played around with was Unity, which is a gaming physics engine, on top of being something that you can, stick 3D models into. The nice thing about Unity, too, is that they were connecting in with Vuforia, which is basically like a server that serves up augmented reality experiences and allows you to use the QR codes and link to those experiences. And then Unity basically gives the physics engine side of it so that your models and stuff stay, in the parameters that you want them to. And then that kind of calls out to Vuforia, and then it brings it back into the application. So, I mean, it's not simple. Unity is one of those things where you might be able to play around with and do a couple easy things, but you are going to need to know some coding like C# and that kind of thing if you want to do anything real custom. It's just worth noting that it's got a lot of potential. It's got a lot of potential for a lot of different things, but you do need to be a little bit technically savvy to use it. Is that what you wanted to know?
Yeah, no, that's very good. And I found this Merge Cube is kind of rinky-dink compared to other things, but it's more teacher level in that I'm going to be learning more about it. I'm running the course again this coming summer, looking at like teacher level tools, what Selby's talking about as well. And so the picture that I have up here were some things I found, but I think Lee was talking about too. Lee, so you can go, Merge Cube is a simple way to get some graphics if they're out there. Or these little 3D engines that they're now creating. One of them comes out of AutoCAD, I forget the name of it, Tinkercad. And they allow you to do some playing with 3D, or you can go out to Google Poly, where other people have posted 3D, and more of these sites are coming up. Or you can pay to go to TurboSquid, where they have really good graphics. But I think that's something, Lee, you want to talk about that? Because I think Lee's investigated this more than I've played with some of these. But MergeCube seems to be a teacher-friendly way, but a very limited way to start doing some of what Carlin wants to do. And I think, Saley, you want to tell us something about some of the tools you've used?
Well, I know I use SketchUp, and I followed a tutorial, and I ended up making a really nice maze. But everything I have to do has to be free. So SketchUp was great, and it had a nice free trial. Then my trial ran out. So for freeware, what I plan on learning more about is Blender. A lot of people in open source recommend Blender. There's a lot of support for Blender. We have Blender buddies. There's a lot of tutorials for Blender. And then Unity I love, which I hope to get into at some point because it's free unless you make a lot of money. So once you start making a lot of money, but a lot of the programs that cost money, I haven't been able to access. And like I said, when I did SketchUp, I loved it, and then you get 1 month free. And so everything you can learn in a month, I was able to create a couple things. So I recommend if you want to just learn it and experiment with it for that 1 month, it's great. If you find a tutorial, make sure you have all your tutorials set up before you download it, the file version. And then you are able to upload that into Kitely or any virtual world, because what you create, you download and they let you keep. But then after that month, it's all done.
Interesting. Hey, has anyone ever noticed a problem uploading into Kitely? I got an error message that it insisted I use the Second Life browser.
That has to do with the fact of Firestorm.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, Firestorm is going through a whole bunch of changes. Second Life has separated Firestorm into 2 different Firestorms. So you cannot use Firestorm for open source anymore unless you re-download it and only use the open source Firestorm. But it has a lot of glitches.
Import into OpenSim from Blender now. I've actually managed to bring some simple items in, but the more complex ones, I was getting error message.
This new Firestorm I've found glitches with the new open source Firestorm from Second Life, and I'm not sure if I'm not sure their commitment of fixing all the open source glitches, because I know that they're really focused on just Second Life. So I hope that they're going to work on the glitches, because I've noticed some as well. I'm not too happy with Firestorm.
You will create problems for yourself if you try to use the Second Life viewer now in Kitely.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah. Okay. Selby, do you have any information because I have a Second Life account, is it possible to move objects from Second Life into OpenSim?
Well,
Second Life is locked down.
Second Life is locked down. And I have done that. And in fact, I have an article about it. I'm not sure that that Second Life is supporting that system now, but it used to be. And I'll find you a link and.
Yeah, I've heard links to like these black market programs that allow you to basically take anything and move it anywhere, but it's the type of thing where I'm afraid I'm going to have the feds on my doorstep.
Well, I don't think you'll get the feds, but I would not want to do that because you don't know what you're installing in your machine.
Yeah, exactly.
And but they have. I know of people who have used them and they used them successfully. However. I'm not. I will look and see if there used to be a setting in Firestorm, and there may still be a setting in some viewer that would allow you to export an object that you created, that you own, into an XML file, which can then be uploaded into Kitely. I've done that. I did that.
I'll give it a try because I'm trying to create some artifacts, some actual sculpture, reproduce a few things, simple things, and I haven't gotten to one where I've imported other than my basic snowman and a few other things. So if it's going to be a problem, I'm not going to waste a lot of energy on it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, okay.
And
Selby, if you do have any links on that, please email them to
I'm
me if you
looking
think
for
about
them.
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm looking for them. It'll take me a little bit to find them.
yeah,
Sure.
we're in, the Wild West, as they say sometimes, and we're going free. Although Selby and I have been going, and I think Selby sent links out to a bunch of us too, to that MOOC that's happening right now, which I've been enjoying. Second Life is going to be more elegant. It's going to cost you a lot more money, and it doesn't allow you to upload entire islands. So people like me who are not artistic don't do well in Second Life because I would have to make everything or buy everything. So, I'm a scroungy, scrappy academic with a STEM background, not an art background, so you can see what my islands look like. But I'm thinking and hoping, and a lot of these, I'm seeing, I was out at California today through a Zoom session. They want to come in and see the open source, open sim that we're using. They're trying to get augmented and virtual reality through the California system. They hit all the same resistance, and Celie has come to see what resistance is against virtual reality, against technology in general. I think all of you will see it. The barriers are coming down. 3D is inevitable, but it's still new, it's still glitchy. And if you want to be a leader, you're always going to be on the glitchy edge anyway. So, that's why we can share among ourselves. I go to minimalist. I try to keep things real simple. Celie and Scott, they push the barriers. They both get all sorts of scripts and everything, but you need that. You need people who are going to push the barriers. And we have to, we're in education to teach people they have to be lifelong learners, and that learning doesn't just stop. And also, it's good for your brain to keep on having to solve problems. It certainly has helped me. So anyway, we're really up against a lot of this. What I'm seeing too, and I'm watching the time because I do have to leave, but of course you folks can stay on. I've got to go in and meet the new associate dean tomorrow morning, and I'm going to be inviting her to our residency. So we're going to all be, wanting to make sure we look good. I don't know if she's going to be up to it, but she's coming in and she's got a language background. And she teaches, I think French is her area, but I'm going to remind her that we can now be international this way. So if you can see the board behind me, have any of you heard of, there's something called Z Space. I tried to get a picture of it, but it's not good. It's not very good. But what I'm seeing happening, we have, I think, the ideal immersive environments, where you really feel like you're part of the environment. You can forget that you're at your computer. But there are also, on the other end, the augmented ones where, you're in your own environment and they have that haptic thing where you can actually feel something. But there's new VR coming out where, I don't know if you can see in that picture, I put the links there and I'll send you all this PowerPoint, but you can actually, with the right set of glasses on, they have glasses, not a big headset, but the students can appear to pull something out of the environment and hover it. And I think this little man is pulling out a heart. They have science activities. I know it sounds a little gruesome as I say it. They have some, yeah, he's doing an operation. Well, remember that game from?
Yeah. Oh, I'm looking at the
Yeah,
website.
and
Oh, it's
you know what, I'll put, and so I think there is going to be these pieces coming out. I'm thinking back to that book chapter on cognition. How does the mind work with these things? And the problem is it's so axiomatic that how do you work? And teachers sometimes are looking for the quick solution. It's going to be, well, we're going to have this piece of software and they're instantly going to learn the chambers of the heart. Well, that was my doctoral thesis, which showed that just having 3D molecular models didn't mean you learned chemistry. It still goes back to the instruction. It still goes back to what do you as a designer want them to do. But lots of things are coming out, but can you guys figure, step back for a minute. I think Selby had part of the answer. What's the common element, or is there a common element among these different things? And while I'm going to send you folks some of these links, but think about it and maybe chat, and I'm going to turn my mic off. And I'm hoping I'm not getting a feedback loop here, because I really want to capture what you're saying. So can you talk amongst yourself about what is the common element? What does this immersion do or mean? Are we going back to our primitive selves, our real selves? Talk about that a little bit, and I will.
Well, I think one of the things that's pretty obvious is when we come into a virtual world, we are used to being in the quote real world. We have all the skills needed to function in that world. When we come into a virtual world, we actually are able to use many of the same skills. So the world we come into in a virtual world is actually fairly familiar. Part of the problem is it's not completely familiar, so we have to learn some new skills. But I've been working on a list of educational issues. One of the things I saw immediately is if you think about situational learning, which is basically the concept is learning in the situation where you will use what you learned. Well, obviously that will work. That is ideal for a virtual world because we can create any situation that you would want, and we can do it at essentially at negligible cost. There are. So that is what actually that is sort of my main issue. I've been working on what aspects of learning would benefit from a use in a virtual world, and that is one. The other that is probably sort of related is if you want to learn to interact with other people, you have to have the other people around. And we have the other people around. And of course we are extremely well trained in interacting with other people. So it seems very natural. So again, that's another very strong point. If you use group projects for education, then you would definitely benefit from having a virtual world because you can bring a group there. So those are a couple of them. I'm actually enumerating several places where it would be particularly valuable. And I'll be quiet now. Some other people can talk.
Well, I think one commonality, just from even a cursory observation, is that there's a degree of interactivity in every single one of these things, which is highly engaging both for children and adults alone. You give them a button to push, they will push the button just to see what the button does. And it's exploratory and interactive at the same time, and this is kind of the thesis of my island right now, is that if you give them enough interesting things to do, they will keep doing things, and in the process, heaven forbid, they might learn something along the way. So there's a degree of engagement in here that they cannot have sitting in a classroom for 45 minutes stone still listening to a lecture. It doesn't work the same way. It's participatory, even to a simple degree where you're just clicking on things. It's giving them some agency that's driving it forward.
Yeah, one of the points that I'm making in my articles is if you look at the educational process from the psychologist standpoint, psychologists will say people learn from practice. If you simply talk to them and then give them tests, that gives them the process of listening and taking tests. They will get to be pretty good at that. That doesn't mean they'll be able to do anything that they learned, that they heard about when they were listening to a lecture. One of my favorite articles that I published recently, again with the title, is the first time you hear a lecture on swimming, you never forget what you learned about lectures.
True.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But when you
Yeah.
get thrown in the water,
Yeah. You
Mhm.
have to learn to swim or you sink. And God willing, there's somebody there to kind of pull you
Mhm.
up and help you along.
I think Carlin's trying to say something to us too, because she watched the nursing training folks with her prototype. So Carlin, are you we're getting I'm just getting static from you, Carlin.
Yep, can you hear me okay?
Okay,
Yep,
now I
can you hear
can.
me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, you know, the one commonality I think between all these technologies is that they kind of fill a gap between what you can do in the real world, but also at the same time what's not possible. Which is why these technologies are interesting and why, you know, I think a lot of us see the great potential in them. I think they're kind of filling the gap, especially when it comes to augmented and mixed reality. It's allowing us to experience things that otherwise would not be possible. Um, but that being said, one of the most important things with that, especially when it comes to education, I think, is that it needs to be familiar at the same time. So even though they're experiencing these new and exciting things, the overall situation that they're in, the environment, or what you're being taught, or you know, what have you, there needs to be kind of a string of commonality and familiarity, which I think these technologies kind of, you know, bring to people at the same
And
time.
Carlin, can you explain too, you worked
Yeah.
with you worked with the faculty who would be the nursing instructors. You also worked with some of the students who were younger. And can you explain to us what you saw in terms of the comfort level with using an augmented application? Because you had iPads, I think, or eventually would use
Sure.
iPads.
Right, and so the reason that I did that was so that they wouldn't be distracted by the device that they were using. There's kind of other augmented reality applications that are coming out for education with like the HoloLens and that kind of thing. But one of the things that was kind of common from both the professor standpoint and the student standpoint was that they felt that that would be a distraction because they had something on their head and they're trying to learn all this new curriculum that is, well, it's intense because it's nursing. So they need to make sure that they're prepared and ready to go before they go to the hospital. And if they're being distracted by this device on their face, it might not really get the point across, or you know, they'll be so distracted with the device rather than the clinical.
Interesting.
So so the iPads, or the idea of an iPad, was more comfortable to them because they were familiar working with these devices. So for them, it was just using an application and experience. So they felt more comfortable with using this application. And it was interesting too because it seemed like the instructors were a bit more excited about the augmented reality application and what it would mean for how they could teach their students and be able to kind of stop sticking sticky notes on to the mannequins' faces. So they were kind of excited about that possibility, but overall, everybody was really excited about the concept of augmented reality. But I felt that the tablet piece of that was important.
It's really interesting.
So I'm going to have to head out myself soon. What I would just like to kind of summarize here, all of these folks here, well, Selby's the lucky one. He's retired. He doesn't have to worry about necessarily going out and finding jobs. But for everybody else here who has it still somewhere in their horizon, clearly there's still a lot out there being developed. The technologies are coming out quickly. as you've all talked about, we're looking at, Selby said, going back to that experiential way of learning. That's how we all learned until they put us in school. Um, where Selby said we learned the lecture.
Well, actually, we learned in school in the first 6th grade. Those were mostly we were mainly learning experientially. When we got into high school, they started lecturing at us.
Mm-hmm. So I think we now are on the cusp of where the potential is coming out. I think in classes like this, you can get proof of concept. You can start making some basics. But if you want, there's going to be a need with publishers, the kind of work Carlin's doing, where she's starting to work in with healthcare, where there'll be people with the expertise and that insight into how you start thinking with these tools so that you can put their creative and visual potential, particularly people who are artistic, also bring that in. Carlin also has a graphic arts background. So a lot of these folks really have that, and I think couple them with maybe some science people that need something done in a hospital setting. It's very hard to get people into clinical practice because you've got real patients and you can't necessarily take them out and put in. We had another gentleman doing something with X-ray technician work that was being done in virtual reality, where they can't afford to put the machines down to just put students in front of them. So there's a lot coming out in the healthcare, but in all sorts of areas with education, museums, the 360 cameras. So I'm going to have to run, but I will save this tape, encourage you all to keep thinking about this. And Scott's going to be masterminding one of the islands for the residency. I'll be putting out some more materials. Scott's, because we're going to have to literally double the faculty. The faculty are going to have to work twice. So my big to-do is to try to get the faculty to be cooperative, think not as much about lecture. So Sylvie's laughing. But what I am doing is I'm putting a lot of activities around. Scott's been nice enough to send me some of his teleports, some of his fun stuff. I'm going to get playing with it. Scott will be playing with it. If any of you guys want to help. So I'm thinking that worst case, okay, if they do 45 minutes of lecture, at least maybe they'll be using the chat. We'll at least get them to be somewhat interactive. But then we'll have times in between, scavenger hunt, things that will be kind of fun. And I'm pulling in some STEM activities will be my to-do. Yeah.
Let me suggest something, Eileen. You want people, when you want people not to do something, don't tell them not to do that. Tell them to do something else. Tell them what you want them to do, because if you tell them not to do it, well, I will suggest don't scratch your head. Don't ever scratch your head, and see how long it takes before you scratch.
Well, Selby, how do we get faculty? So tell them to lecture, and maybe they won't.
No, tell them what you want them to do. If you tell them
I
not to
see.
do that, they don't know what to do.
Okay, good point.
So tell them to think of activities that will give people practice in what they want to tell the audience.
Scott knows Susan Forbes. I've been trying to get her to think about, even she's a theater person, to think about having the avatars in front of her do some gestures that she, so we're trying to get some real ideas. We have the game guy who teaches he teaches Unity. He's thinking of bringing some students in who've developed things and have them talk about how they developed games. So anyway, we're trying, and actually I have a faculty meeting tomorrow morning where I'm going to, I'll think about what you said, Selby. I'll tell them what to do.
And let me point out, let me suggest, you just mentioned somebody who is in acting. This affords a good opportunity. Instead of talking about acting, what she should do, and I hope she can do this, is get a few people in the audience and give them some kind of theatrical training exercise that she will have been in if she learned acting. And that would be, for example, you're really angry at this person, and give them a subject, whatever that is, show your anger. That's very different from you really are trying to calm everybody down. These are actions, these are role-playing actions that that actually give people, to help people develop skills
That's
to
a
do
great
those
idea.
kinds of things.
Scott, are you going to bell the cat? We'll get Susan thinking about that. That's excellent. Okay, well, I will ask you, please stay on if you can and come up with some more activities. Think about things. Think about, say, well, all of you, except for Carlin, were at, I think most of you at least stopped in last year at some point for the residency. And we're going to have a lot more people, I think. We're going to have 2 islands. It's going to be pretty busy. The students should be okay at getting around. I'm going to have some exercises to keep them busy in between. What'll be nice is I'll be monitoring one island. Scott will be monitoring the other. So from an evaluation perspective, after the fact, I think we'll have, we'll be 2 different people doing things 2 different ways. So we'll be able to talk a lot about what ways we can optimize things, because we do have to write and publish and really get our findings out to others. So I have to leave, but if you guys can chat things up and come up with more ideas, that's great. If not, I'm going to thank you for coming, and I'll be in touch. I think we'll have one more meeting before the actual event. But it's a little nail-biting time for me. I think maybe for Scott too. But you just have to do it, and things are always going to be glitchy. But you guys helped me out last year, so I hope if you can come and help me out this year, it'd be great. So I've got to run. Good night, everybody. Thank you for coming. Stay as long as you can, and have a good night. And we'll have to see if we can get the other folks to get their headsets working. Okay, goodbye.